everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we'll be doing an in-depth side-by-side, I guess you could call it a dupes video or even a comparison video with half my face featuring new launches from Fenty, their Pro Filter Foundation, Pro Filter Instant Retouch Concealer and Instant Retouch Powder, which is the loose version, which is the newest one that will be on half my face. As you can see, I already have my makeup on, and on the other side I'll be revealing either very close competitors or something that's really hyped up, a concealer that's really hyped up in comparison to the Fenty side. But let's just get into the foundation first. Okay, so for the Fenty Pro Filter Foundation, I'm in the shade 190 and I find this to be my perfect shade match. Literally, for all the comparisons, when it comes to Fenty Beauty, you cannot beat the shade selection, and you'll definitely find one that's either exactly your skin tone or as close as it ever will get. So I'm in 190, and as you see me applying it, basically I use a beauty blender for all applications so that, you know, we have a very tight comparison. For me, when I applied the Pro Filter foundation on my left side, I found that it was very glidable. I find this texture to be somewhat like a concentration of fresh caramel. It's really syrupy, and I love the texture of this. When I use it with a sponge, it glides over my skin like nothing else. A lot of people have made comments that this foundation does set really quickly, but I find that when you use it with a damp sponge, it gives you sufficient time to blend it all over the face. I found that as I was applying this all over my face, one thing to note is that if you are a dry skin girl, you definitely need to do your skincare prep. For me today, I did not use any kind of skincare products whatsoever. I did have a few like dry flakes on the left side of my face where I applied all the Fenty products, so there was a little bit of, like, I wouldn't say a scab, but like a dry flake, which it did catch on to very early on. So it will be there throughout, and you can't really be helped unless you moisturize your skin and exfoliate it sufficiently. Okay, going on to a dupe. And I say it's a dupe because the ingredient list is almost exactly the same, just fall shorting of the fact that maybe the Fenty Beauty has a little bit more fragrance, but it's as close as it's gonna get, which is the Catrice HD Liquid Coverage, and it comes in a different type of bottle, but in essence the product is really the same. I've had the Pro Filter foundation for quite a while, so I would say that I can't firmly say whether or not a fresh bottle of this has the same kind of texture in terms of the foundation. But what I notice is that when I really get the freshest drop of the Fenty Beauty foundation and I get like a drop of this, they're both of the same consistency. Like I mentioned, it's like that very fresh caramel feel. But as you see me applying the Catrice foundation on my skin, it honestly, it's because of the wet texture, the sponge does eat up a lot more product, but I find that when you layer enough, so when I applied an initial like one coating, it felt really comparable. I needed to kind of add on to my complexion, but once I did that and I got an even coating on both sides, the finish is exact. I mean, the wear time or the setting time of the foundation is the same. It really felt exactly the same to me, how it looked like on my face. I'm just going to show you the two ingredient list at this point and point out the fact that at least half of the ingredient list, starting from the first to the middle kind of ingredient, is exactly the same, in the same order. And it's kind of remarkable because the Catrice foundation is literally so affordable. It's almost like 1/3 the price of the Fenty Beauty one. Okay, next, the Pro Filter Instant Retouch Concealer from Fenty. This is something that's been going around the internet like wildfire, but this is a very beautiful product. I must say that I was a bit disappointed. When I look at it, it's a very beautiful packaging, but I feel like it's very small, you know, it's like very little. And I'm not sure whether this is done because, you know, in conjunction with their foundation, it's kind of like, why do we need so much concealer or something like that. But in terms of quantity, the Shape Tape wins by about 2 ml. This is 8 ml and the Shape Tape's about 10. But yeah, moving on to the application, I only use concealer under my eyes because I wanted to be really close in comparison. I took only one swipe out of the tube and I applied it under my eye, and I took it down in a triangle sort of fashion, and that's all I applied under my eye. What I found that with this concealer, it is, I wouldn't say super thick like the Shape Tape, but it is something that very comparable to concealers that we have been using. Like, you would consider this to be something similar to the NYX HD concealer in terms of the fluidity of the product, and also the ColourPop No Filter Concealer would be another. There are others that I've tried that are of similar consistency. I believe Urban Decay has a Naked Skin Concealer also with a very similar vibe. But I would say that nonetheless, this is a super full coverage concealer. Once you apply it and blend it out with a sponge, it completely cancels out every single discoloration you have under the eye. I would say that if you started off with a little bit of product, unlike what I did, I really went in on that. But even though it was only one swipe out of the tube, I found that it was really full coverage. But if you use a little bit, I think it is shareable, which is always great in my books because I always like to use concealer on its own. And yeah, I just think that this is something that you could go either way with. You can go like ultra full coverage, you can go spot concealing, you can go, you know, contouring, you can do all that. And the amazing thing about these concealers is that they match kind of the numbering of your foundation. Mine was 190. I actually picked up 190 and 185. So I used 185 because I wanted to compare it to the Shape Tape, which is significantly lighter. So moving on over to the Shape Tape, and you can see with the product being shown, it is a beautiful, very kind of full coverage, thick formulation. I find that if you're talking about viscosity of both of the product, definitely the Shape Tape has a little bit more kind of firmness to it. It's almost like a mousse, but it is somewhat of a liquid mousse, if that makes sense. If you guys watch a ton of Shape Tape reviews, you would know how this performs already. I did the exact same thing. I applied it under my eyes like a triangle and I blended it out with a beauty blender. And the Shape Tape to me is something that is controversial in my books because I don't like it on its own. It never has worked on my skin as a, you know, concealer one and done kind of thing. I find that it sets on my skin really quickly to a point where I can see a distinct line and it doesn't blend into my skin very well. I feel like while it does adhere to the skin really well, but it doesn't sit very naturally, and I almost have to like go the extra mile and apply like loads of moisturizer or incorporate a drop of oil into this so that it blends a little bit better. But we're talking about full coverage, you're talking about won't slip off your face, if you're talking about longevity, the Shape Tape has always been a winner in so many people's opinion, and for me as well. But I only use this like when I have a full face of glam, as you can see. If I go back to the ingredient list of the concealers, they both start off with a high concentration of water, which most concealers do, but after that it doesn't really correspond in any way. I would say that if I look, I have the ingredient list here, but the Shape Tape has a lot of like extracts and a lot of kind of oils, fruit oils, which I assume is supposed to make it a little bit more emollient, and probably that's where the kind of thickness comes from. But surprisingly, the setting abilities, I'm not really sure where to pinpoint in the ingredient list how that is derived. With the Fenty Pro Concealer, it's just, the ingredient list to me sounds a little bit more thought out, you know. It doesn't sound like something that, oh, I'm gonna jam pack a whole bunch of things without really, you know, thinking about the consumer in terms of, you know, what they're applying to their face and that kind of thing. But I just think that there's glycerin, there's sodium chloride, there are some leaf extracts, but not that much. So this doesn't have that much of, you know, I would say oils or anything like that in terms of the Pro Filt'r concealer. But I would say that for the Pro Filt'r concealer, it definitely has a scent, and it's very similar to that kind of baby powder scent that the foundation has. Oh yeah, before I forget, the foundation from Catrice also had that baby powder scent, which makes it even more comparable. But for the Tarte Shape Tape, it's quite heavily fragrant in my opinion, but both fragrance subside the moment you apply it and blend it out. Okay, and last but not least, the Pro Filt'r Instant Retouch Fenty Beauty Loose Setting Powder, and I'm in the shade Butter. And yeah, you will see me applying it. What I did was I tried to bake my under eye, which I don't typically do, but I really wanted to see how it wears on the skin, how it feels under my eye, and you know, whether or not we can get that really smooth, almost porcelain like skin finish. So what I did was I used the Dampen Beauty blender and I packed it under my eye, as you can see there, and I really went in and made sure that, you know, those under eye kind of creases was really smooth over. I would say that I don't have that many creases to kind of test it out on, but right inside here I have like a couple, like maybe 5 kind of lines, which makes it really noticeable if a powder can smooth over those cracks. So when I applied it, I just gave it a bit of time to sit, and then I brushed it off with a clean brush, which is like a powder brush or something like that. So when I brushed it off, like honestly my skin felt so smooth even now as I'm touching it. I've worn this makeup, by the way, for like a couple of hours already, so even as I'm touching it now, it feels like so baby soft. The only downside to this powder is that it's pretty fragranced, and I don't typically notice fragrance in my powders, and it isn't, I would say I don't really like it, but you know, this doesn't really bother me after it subsides. But I would say that if you are someone that is very sensitive to it, then really steer clear. But yeah, it's like a very pleasant kind of baby powder scent as well. So I picked up the shade Butter. They also have Lavender, which is their translucent or brightening version, and I picked this shade up because I really wanted to compare it to the Laura Mercier translucent powder. I believe in the years Laura Mercier is kind of, I'm not really sure what they're trying to do, but this translucent version that I've picked up isn't exactly translucent, if that makes sense. I've had this for the longest time, but it's their loose setting powder, and it kind of has a tinge, like a beigey tinge to it, which is why I matched it with the Fenty Beauty shade in Butter, because they both almost look pretty similar in terms of that tinge. I did the same thing under my eye on this side, and yeah, the results are really beautiful. I would say that the side of the Fenty Beauty feels a lot more soft than the Laura Mercier side, but that could probably be because this is pretty old and it's not a fresh batch. But I would say that when I applied the Laura Mercier under my eye, I felt it really sink into the skin a lot quicker, and also it just feels really baby soft under my eyes. I would say that when I applied the Laura Mercier powder under my eyes, it was a lot easier to manage in a way that once I pounced it on the skin, it really kind of evenly distributed itself out. And only with powders, I notice when, you know, it feels a little bit cakey on the skin and stuff like that. But I think nowadays a lot of people attribute loose powders to the, you know, the baby smoothness of it and that kind of thing, which to me doesn't really matter. Like, if it's very soft to the touch, yeah, sure, I mean, it's a bonus to have, but the way it looks on my skin, I feel like the Laura Mercier one really looks ultra natural, and also it just really smooth over the fine lines. But as I'm talking now, like, there are still creases under my eye in terms of the powder, but it looks a lot more smooth. So it really is your preference in terms of which one you want. In terms of quantity, the Laura Mercier is at 30 grams and the Fenty Beauty is at 28 grams, but really it's pretty much not that noticeable. The Fenty Beauty packaging is a little bit more weighted than that of Laura Mercier, but for me personally, because of the fragrance, I would have to say I really like the Laura Mercier one a lot more. Alright, and that's my full rundown of the Fenty Beauty launch. And if you guys want to know my in-depth review and the ingredient list and also overlapping corresponding ingredients which is dupable, definitely check out the description box. And also if you want to know where to shop, everything will be down there. Also, every single product that I have on my face is Fenty Beauty related. I have an Insta video on my IG now, so you can check it out here. And yeah, let me know if you guys are thinking of picking up the Catrice foundation, and if you guys want to see any other kind of side-by-side reviews or highly raved about products that you want me to source for an affordable dupe. I'll definitely be researching on that. So yeah, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!